Hopefully it connects, because StreamYard's been giving me issues. Okay, hello. Yeah, surprise. Hello. We are live for the Book Troop live show for We Used to Live Here, which was our September selection, but we did end up rescheduling this live show. So thank you so much for your patience and your understanding as we just had to, work around all of our schedules and things. But also let us know if you can see us, because StreamYard is showing that we're live, but it's showing 0 viewers. So I'm like, oh no, is it actually live?
I'm refreshing the page right now.
And let me see if it's actually, because like last time it gave me this issue where it wasn't actually going live on my channel for like another like 30 seconds or something. So
YouTube has quite a delay in their
I know. I've
live.
noticed like a delay lately with StreamYard. So that's quite annoying.
Okay, we're live now.
Okay, cool.
Okay,
awesome. Perfect.
Say we're up.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Awesome. Haven't read, but here to support. Thanks, Gavin. But hello to everybody joining us in the chat. As you can see, I'm joined by 2 friends today. I'm joined by Allie from Hardback Hoarder and Ashley from Ashley's Little Library, which I'm very excited and grateful that you made the time to read along with me this month and join the live show. And yeah, maybe we can have you both introduce yourselves, because I know Ashley's been on the book troop a few times before, but Allie's never been on the book troop. So like, how exciting, a new face around here.
I was very excited.
Yeah, if you want to like just, briefly introduce yourself, maybe just talk about, what you do here on the internet. That would be cool. Maybe like a recent favorite book if you have one. Any of that would be great.
Yeah. Shall I go first?
Yeah, you can kick us off. I would love that.
All right. I'm Allie, Hardback Hoarder, but I'm also known as With Malice in a few other locations as well. Yes. Been on BookTube for like 10 years now, which is crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. I mostly read horror and fantasy these days, but I'll read just about anything.
Nice.
And then I stream on Twitch, which is, everyone keeps talking about the background. This is my stream room.
Yeah.
Harold the Skeleton. He's always here. Normally we have Gavin actually in the corner of the screen.
Yes. I was going to say, you've got the really professional setup happening over there, and I love it. I have Allie's Twitch linked in the description, by the way, so you can check it out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, I'm Ashley. My channel is Ashley's Little Library, and I mostly read mystery, thriller, horror, with a little bit of sometimes fantasy, sometimes romance in there. I can't think of a recent book I've loved because I haven't been reading as much recently, but I do have an upcoming 24-hour horror-a-thon in October that I have not announced yet, but I will be doing at the end of the month, where we read short horror novellas. So if you're into that, look out for that.
Yeah, that's exciting.
That. I run a horror novella book club.
Oh yeah.
They're my favorite.
Yeah. What is it called? It's called Tiny Terrors?
Tiny Terrors, yeah.
That's so cute. I love that. Well, awesome. Well, thank you both so much for joining me. I have both of their channels linked down in the description if you're not familiar with them, so you can go and check them out and show them some love. And today we are here because we all read We Used to Live Here, and we're here to discuss it with you today. I would love to know in the chat if you are here because you've read the book, or if you are just here to hang out with us. It'll be a minute before we jump into spoilers, so you are clear to stay if you haven't read it, but I would love if you could put maybe like a red heart in the chat if you have read it, and then maybe like a little house if you haven't. Just to stay on brand. And then while everybody's doing that, would one of you want to give like a non-spoilery synopsis if you feel comfortable doing so?
I don't even know where to begin to give a synopsis.
I know.
We were saying before that like I feel like the book did not advertise itself so as like it actually basically plays out.
It's a tough one to describe.
I was gonna say, like, you basically describe the first chapter because everything just does this afterwards. Like, this is the timeline, literally. So, a couple moves into a house, and then one day, a family shows up in a snowstorm and is like, hey, I used to live here. And despite them being creepy as all heck, they're like, come on in.
Yeah, that's
chaos ensues.
And then absolute chaos after that.
Yeah, basically, like, we're following a queer couple. They move into a house. Old family shows up at the house. They're like, we used to live here. Can we take a look around? and then they come in, and then the story's just chaos from there. That's pretty much, I don't know, it's like so hard to talk about this book without getting into like anything spoilery, because I feel like it's, you know, it's like easy to spoil this one. So so yeah, that is the full premise. And it was a crazy time. And then I think, should we just jump right into ratings? Should we just go right into it?
Sure.
Okay, just because I feel like it'll be hard to talk about anything with this book without talking about ratings first thing, so we'll just do that first. So if you want to, in the chat, if you did read the book, which thank you, by the way, there is such a large amount of hearts in the chat, so like thank you so much to everybody who's reading along with us. I really appreciate your participation. And if you would like to, in the chat, just let us know your rating, you know, 1 out of 5 stars, how you felt about it, give us all of that info, and we'll let you know our ratings. Allie, do you want to kick us off? Because I think you're the only one that I don't know your rating.
I gave it 4 stars upon finishing it.
Okay. Very cool.
But after thinking about it, I'm like, I don't even know if I've read the same book as everybody else, apparently.
Yeah, you're like, I was signing up for quite a bit here on not even realizing it. Wow.
Okay, but I have a lot of high ratings, it seems like.
I know, it does look like this one has across the board a lot of, you know, really high reviews, which is always exciting to see. And then Allie, just like a brief, like why it was a 4-star for you without getting into any spoilery content, but just like why was it 4 stars?
I gave it 4 stars because I read this in one go, essentially. It was one of those books where you can't stop. It doesn't even matter if you fully understand what's going on or not. You want to keep going to see if there's like a better understanding that you can get at. Yeah. And even if you don't, it's still like a thrilling book at the end of the day. Like I read it pretty much at surface level. And yeah, and I still had a good time with it. So
yeah. Wow. All right. Very cool. And then Ashley, I think I do know how you feel, but how did you feel about it?
I gave it a 5, which is really exciting. Like I said, I haven't been reading as much right now. So sometimes when I'm not reading as much, I'm a little less critical too. So I could see a world where this was a 4, maybe, because I do have some complaints with it. Like, I don't think it was the perfect book, but I really like a book that can set itself up on just kind of like a gimmick, like, oh, a couple just comes in the house and that's all you need to know. And then you're so enthralled the whole time to see, where is this going? What is happening next? Why is this happening? And I also had no idea like what subgenre of horror this was going to be. So the whole time I was like, it could go anywhere.
Yeah. I totally agree. I'm still figuring out like my rating for this one, but I'm settling right now on like a 4.5 stars. But honestly, like after this discussion, I feel like I could lean more into 5-star territory. I've been like so eagerly waiting to discuss this book, just because I feel like this is actually going to be a really fun book to discuss, because I think it is kind of one of those stories where like, yeah, you're left with some questions at the end, but I do think it's one of those books that's kind of fun to like make theories about, you know, and just kind of like talk about, what did you think about this, and like what did you find creepy? Because like for me, there were so many scenes that were so creepy, like got under my skin, like actually scared the crap out of me. So I can't wait to talk about all of it. But that's so exciting. I'm so glad everyone for the most part really enjoyed it, and it seems like a lot of people in the chat really enjoyed it as well. So that's great to hear. One of the first things I wanted to ask, just as like a kind of a joke or to, you know, break the ice, is if you were in Eve's situation, would you have let them in? Like, would you have let this family in if you were alone at your house and this family like shows up and it's like snowy and they're like, hey, we used to live here, can we take a look around? Like, would you have let them in, do you think?
I wouldn't have even opened the door.
No.
I would have been on the 2nd story peeking down and pretending I wasn't home. That's what I do all the time.
Yep, me too.
Yeah. I know. It's like I do relate to like Eve's kind of like people pleaser kind of like, you know, tendencies, where she's like, oh, like I would so do the same thing where she's like, let me call my girlfriend to ask if like, I totally related to that for her, because I was like, yeah, I would do the same thing where like I would have trouble saying no like right to their face as soon as they're there, you know, but it's like, but I would be like, oh, let me call and like ask somebody else if you can. Like, I just thought that was really funny that she did that. But
me, a 31-year-old woman, calling my mom going, can these people visit?
Can they come in? No, okay. Oh my god, that's so true. Yeah, I would not have even answered the door. Oh my god.
Yeah. What are you gonna say? Like, oh no, I'm home alone, so I don't really feel comfortable. And then it's like, well, if you do have
I know.
Now they know you're home alone.
That's so true. Like now they know. So like,
I do think it is important that there's children
Yeah.
And I think if it had just been a husband and wife, it would have been a much different story.
Yeah.
But the fact that the children are there, that's the like, oh, it's snowing and oh, look at you guys. And I guess, yeah.
Well, that's what I mean. Do the children make it like less threatening or like more threatening?
I think less. In opening the door.
Yeah.
I think less. Like you feel more obligated to open the door because there's children.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, these people aren't going to involve their children in like a robbery scheme if that's
right. Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Very funny. Yeah, I know. It's good to know, like, none of us really are door answerers. Sounds like.
Wow, introverts on the internet not opening their doors?
Crazy. Front page news. Okay, and then one of the other questions I had about the book is, you might have noticed during some of the documents throughout this book, at the end of some of the documents, there's like little Morse code at the end of all of them. And it was really cool because I don't know if either of you listened to the audiobook as well, but like at the end of the documents, it would make this really cool like do 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 noise for like the Morse code bits, which I thought was really fun. But I was just wondering, for your experience reading this book, were you trying to solve the Morse code like as you were reading the book, or was it something that you looked up afterwards, or did you not even notice the Morse code?
I didn't even know there was in the book. I did see the lines and dots, but I was like, oh yeah, that's just the styling of how.
Yeah, you're like, what is that? What is that? It's just
that completely went over my head. So if that gets into spoilers and you have information, I'm very interested to hear what people say.
Yes.
Yeah, I was listening to the audiobook and then I was like, oh, there's like mixed media. I need to get the physical. But I thought it was just the end of like the chapter, and I was like so like jump scared every time it happened, and I just thought it was just like the radio ending.
That's true. It does kind of sound like radio static or like some kind of weird like noise.
Yeah, and I think I even complained about it in a vlog and was just like, what is this god awful noise that they're putting at the end of these?
You're like, this is not artsy. This is annoying.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I know. I only knew about the Morse code because when I was talking about like reading this book, people were like, oh, don't forget to check out the Morse code, or like people were telling me about it. So like, I don't know if I would have noticed it if nobody had told me about it before I started reading it, but I noticed it while I was reading it. But then I decided not to like look into cracking the code of like what the Morse code was about until after I finished reading it, just in case. Cause I was like, well, what if it like spoils me? Or I was just, I was kind of like going into it overly cautious, but I did check out the, Morse code after this book, because there's so many Reddit threads about this book, by the way, which is me and Allie were just talking about it before we went live, because I was like, wow, I was not really realizing what I was signing myself up for with this book. But apparently there are many threads with like deep dives on Reddit about this book, with like a lot of people's theories and then like cracking the Morse code. And there's a lot of other secret messages apparently throughout this book too, which I don't know if you guys noticed. I didn't notice, but apparently there's like secret messages with like capitalized letters as well.
I noticed that in one document at least.
Yeah. I'm so surprised I didn't notice it while I was actually reading the book, but I was like, wow, like there was quite a lot of things in this book that are kind of, I don't know, I think it's kind of cool that like you can go on Reddit and like try to find all the like mysterious hidden messages and stuff like that. I think it kind of makes it kind of interactive and fun. But I was going to ask, like, how did you feel about like the mixed media elements of this book? And do you feel like they added a lot to the story for you, or were you mostly kind of like not that interested in them?
I think because I listened to it at first, I felt so disconnected, because I was just like, this feels kind of random.
Yeah.
At this point, like when they start appearing, I was just like, what is going on? What is happening right now? Because at this point I was thinking it's a family that has come in and they're overstaying their welcome.
Yeah.
Essentially. Yeah. And I'm like, why are we looking at a document about tattoo removal? I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And then as it got further in, it was those moments of like, oh my gosh, like this comes back. And that's when I was like, I got to get a physical copy to see like what's going on. It was very surprising though, because this doesn't look like the type of book that normally has mixed media.
Right.
And I don't even think it's mentioned anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked that it wasn't so straightforward of mixed media, because, you'll read a thriller book and it's like mixed media, but it's diary entries from one person the whole time interspersed, and it's one consistent thread. With this one, you really sometimes were like, what does this have to do with the story? Like, it kind of reminds me of this one little thing that they mentioned in the chapter before, but I don't know why this is important or things going on in the town, how that contributes to the story. So, I mean, still by the end of the book, I'm like, I still don't fully know what all
Yeah.
I don't know that I fully get it, but
Yeah.
it gives you like another mystery to try to solve while you're reading the story.
I agree. I think that makes it kind of like fun and interactive in a way to like have that extra piece to a story like this. I was gonna ask too because I saw somebody just mentioned House of Leaves and how the author said that this was inspired by House of Leaves in a way. Have either of you read House of Leaves?
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Yes.
do you see any similarities there? Or like, because I haven't read it yet, so I wouldn't.
Yeah, I had actually made note that it reminded me of House of Leaves, which is interesting because I hated House of Leaves.
Oh, no.
But I also read House of Leaves for a 24-hour reading sprint.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And that was a journey.
That was a choice.
Yeah. But I did see like there's a lot of elements that you can tell were inspired by House of Leaves. Now, this feels like a much more accessible version of House of Leaves.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Then
House of Leaves is like an accomplishment to read.
Yes.
Whereas this is like an entertaining story.
Yeah.
This is like a beginner's version of House of Leaves.
Yeah. It also kind of reminds me of that book S. That's like of Theseus, because of the way that one incorporates mixed media, and it's a little bit reminiscent of this, but story-wise more similar to House of Leaves.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, good to know. I still haven't read House of Leaves. It's like been on my TBR for like literally like forever, so many years, and I just keep pushing it off because I'm scared. But it's very interesting that so many people compare this to House of Leaves, and it honestly just makes me want to read House of Leaves even more. So
once you finish House of Leaves, whether you like it or not, it just becomes a trophy.
Yeah,
like I did this.
I
did it.
Right?
Yeah.
That is amazing. Okay, and then I guess before jumping into spoilers, just if you wanted to mention like what was something that you really liked about this book and what was something that you really didn't like about this book, if you can talk about it without jumping into spoilers, but if not, we can get into it if you're like, I don't know how to talk about this without spoiling it.
Something that I really liked about the book, I mean, I kind of already said it, but I really liked just not knowing where it was going to go. I feel like when you read so many horror and thriller books, you get so used to the same formulas. And this isn't, a wildly unique concept of a family coming into the house, but the way the story unfolds is just so cinematic and captivating, and you really like can't look away from it. Something I didn't like about the book, I do feel like it's a little bit unsatisfying, which I tend to enjoy ambiguous books anyways. So I'm, more predisposed to not mind that as much, but you do get to the end and you're like, wait, what about this thing and this thing and this thing? Like we never got these answers. It's kind of opening new questions by the end. So you don't leave feeling like you understood everything. But I didn't know there's a lot of Reddit threads, and now I'm like, I want to go read those. So if you're really engaging your stories, it opens up a lot of room to start like tearing it apart.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you say that, because the one thing I didn't like is that I thought the ending wasn't as open-ended as I would have liked.
Oh, really?
Yes, this is a story where I was like, I need this to be way more open-ended than I feel like it was.
Interesting.
But
so you want like nothing explained.
Pretty much, yeah. Especially like in the context of something like this, where it is a mind-bending story. And I think it needs to end on where everyone interpreted it differently, which it seems like a lot of people do anyway. But the ending I felt was kind of more concrete to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I kind of wish like I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I kind of wish I just didn't read that. But I do agree that I feel like when you read so many horror and mystery, you guess very early like what's going to happen, and sometimes that can be disappointing. But this one I would be like, is this what's happening? No, scratch that out. Is this what's happening?
Yeah.
Wait, I don't know. Yeah. So this one's definitely it felt refreshing.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I agree. I think one of the things that I really loved about this book was not only that like it had so many scenes that like genuinely creeped me out, but I also loved the kind of like weirdness of it and the way that I really never had any idea like what the fuck was going on. But I really liked that about this, like the fact that it just kept me guessing and kept me like predicting like where's the story going. But I also just really loved like Eve as a protagonist. I just really connected with her, and I really liked her character a lot, and her relationship with Charlie. Like I thought they were genuinely so cute. Like I thought that they were written so well, and I just really vibed with both of their characters. And then my only, like, the only reason why I'm holding back from giving it a 5-star is because I do agree that the ending was a little bit unsatisfying. I think that's the perfect word to use, because it's like, yeah, like, I do tend to love ambiguous stories. Like, I always talk about how I love an ambiguous ending, but this one left so many things unanswered for me that I was like, I need just a little bit more. You know, like, I wanted just a few more things kind of like touched on again or brought back up. But I also think there is a level of creepiness to like not getting answers about certain things, you know, and I think that almost makes them even more scary. So that's kind of why I do appreciate it looking back on it more, but in the moment I was like furious, you know. But yeah, I think we're gonna go ahead and jump into spoilers, because we've been here for 20 minutes and there's so many things that I want to touch on with this book. So if you have not yet read the book, we will be jumping into spoilers from this point forward, because there's a lot to talk about with this one. So thank you so much for joining us in this live show. And from this point forward, spoilers will be happening. So I guess the first thing I want to talk about with spoilers is, what was like a moment in the book that you found to be the most creepy personally? Or was there like a moment that you were like, oh my God, hell no, like you found that personally like really scary? Or like, what was the scariest moment of the book for you? Because I know everybody's scared about different things, you know, so.
The attic. The attic scene. It gave me, anyone who's read Daphne by Josh Mallerman, I was picturing Daphne,
oh my God, yes,
because the descriptions were pretty similar in a way, but also just like fumbling around in the dark is my least favorite thing in the world.
Yes,
and your flashlight going out and you think someone's in there with you. I just would like curl up in a ball and be like, I'm done.
Yeah,
I'm done.
Yes, 100% agree.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the scene where I think she's in the basement the first time with the dad, and then she's like calling his name and he's facing away from her and not moving or responding to her at all. And I was like, what is about to happen in this basement? Like, that freaked me out a lot.
Yes.
And then generally, once you get to the end and she's like starting to lose grip of her own reality and doesn't know like why and how that's happening, that really gave me anxiety, just like the mental aspect.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I know the whole thing with like the basement, there's like some kind of shadowy person or like shadowy figure, and it rises to be like 6 feet tall. I was like, absolutely not. Like, hell no, like that is so creepy. And the way Charlie's just like laying in bed, just like not doing anything about it. I'm like, girl, get up. Like, what are you doing? I agree. I also think like one of the creepiest things for me, outside of like, yeah, the attic scenes with like that hospital gown lady, I don't know, like that shit really scared me. But then something that also really scared me, that was such a like little thing, I guess, is when these characters would like go into a trance or something. Like when Thomas was like exploring the basement and then he just like his arms went slack and like the flashlight's like pointing at the floor and he's just like zoned out. Dude, that shit creeps me out so bad. I'm like, what the fuck was going on with him? And like one of the answers that I had at the end that was kind of annoying was like, what was that? Like, what was he doing? And like the random moments where he would like slap himself in the face or something. And like,
or
he would just,
when they woke up in the middle of the night and he was outside, like saying, I'm sorry, and asking where Allison is. And it's like, is that a real him breaking through? Like, what's going on?
I know. That's what I'm saying. Like any of those moments with Thomas, like just getting lost in a trance or something really freaked me out, because it just like, like stuff like that freaks me out when somebody's just like zoning out completely and you don't know like what's going on with them. But I also wish that we had a little bit more explanation for like, what the heck was that? Or like, was he like slipping in between dimensions or something while that was happening? Like, I don't know. So very interesting. And then I guess, so my big question with this book is, what do you think was happening at the end? Or like, what is your theory for like what is going on in this book? Because I think we can confirm that it is a little bit ambiguous. And so like, Allie, like what would you have wanted different about the ending of this? Or what did you think was like too resolved? Because I'm so curious to know.
Yeah, well, to be fair, I read this at a much more face value than everyone on Reddit, apparently.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't doing a bunch of deep dives into stuff. And so I was like, oh, you know, like multi-universe. The house is a door into something. And, you know, Thomas, his last name is Faust. I mean, we got some like devil stuff going on here. So at the end, I was like, oh, because up to this point, you have no clue what's real, what's not real. Is Eve Eve? Is she Emma? Is she Allison? Like at this point, you don't know. And then there's I think it's like the very last chapter. Well, before like Charlie's Charlie's point of view, I don't know, OG Charlie's point of view or whatever, where he comes in and gives her the locket, And I was like, this to me confirms that she is based in reality. Like, she is Eve and he has manipulated her.
Yeah.
And I wish we hadn't gotten that at all. I wish I would have still been going, who is she at the end? Like, who is she?
Yeah. Interesting. So you feel like by him giving her the necklace, that's like, that confirms that like she is Eve, but she's been like moved into like an alternate dimension or an alternate reality or something like that, where like her world no longer exists. And like he was
I
able
think her going into the doorway, I still don't really understand why the doorway is a hospital hallway. Yeah. And I don't know the importance of the hospital hallway, but the moment she goes in there, I think that is, you know, maneuvering the different worlds. And I'm so sorry, my dog is decided to go crazy right now, but
that's okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting. How do you feel about it, Ashley? Do you agree?
Kind of. I mean, if you read it on a surface level, that's what I took from it too. Like, okay, Eve is grounded in reality and we can trust her experience and what we see at the beginning and all that really happened. But also, can we? Like, what if from the very beginning, and this whole thing's mostly told, I don't know if it's in third perspective or first perspective, but either way, you're closest to Eve. So the narrator wants you to find Eve reliable, but like, what if she's not? And what if there is something else going on? So I don't know. My first theory of what I thought was going on was like Skinwalker vibes happening, but then it did start to seem more like multi-dimensional. And then there's that one document chapter where it starts going on about like the host and the guests and the whatever, like that whole system, how things work. And there's the locations, there's the old house. In that one, that's the one I remember where there were capitalized letters and it spelled out like the old gods see all.
Yeah.
Like, what are the old gods? And what does that have to do? Like, I don't know. I had no answers.
Yeah. I know. I think maybe now would be a good time to bring up the Morse code translates into a message that says the old man with the scar has lived in the cabin for centuries and goes by many different names. So that's what the Morse code is saying. Because you know that scene where there's like the old man in the cabin back there and he says, the people in the house, they're not, that's not what they look like or whatever. And so like, I guess my theory would be that I think the old man in the cabin is Thomas, like his human form, maybe. And then like this entity god creature thing that is Thomas now like took his identity and is like now living as some kind of like crazy god. I don't know. But I was like, I think that Morse code message, it confirms, right, that like that old man is Thomas or connected to Thomas or something like that. That was in
They also have the same scar.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people saying that they feel Thomas and the old man, or at least connected in some way.
What is the chronology of the scar? Did he have that before from like his sister stabbing him 37 times, but didn't it like not exist at one time, but then it did again? Because did Eve stab him too at one point in the end or something?
Off his whole jaw.
Yeah, she did. Yeah.
Which is someone actually pointed out that right before that, there's the painting of him in the basement, and she swipes her finger across his jaw, and then in the next chapter, she takes off his jaw, and that means that the other paintings in the basement likely reflect other things that happen. And like there's some where the house is burnt down and things, and some where
documents about the fire.
Yeah, and then there's some where it's like only some family members are there, some of them aren't.
Yeah, I know. So what do you think was the thing with like, because you know how at the end they said, oh, the house, like he gave the wrong address when they were like, you know, it was like a number off or something like that. And there was like a missing house. Cause like, I don't know if you remember when she was like looking for the neighbor's house, it was like 107 or whatever the number 7 was like missing. So like maybe that has something to do with that. Like there was like an alternate reality where that house like vanished or something, or because there was all those messages that were like, remember what house you're in, or you're like, you're in the right house, or you're in the wrong house. Like there was all that too. So like,
the house number changes throughout the whole book.
Yeah.
When they talk about the house that they bought, it's a certain number, and then when she goes to visit the neighbor, it's a different number. And then when the police are called or something like that, it's a different number. And then when he's talking about it, it's a different number. Which
so like that had to be all intentional. So I'm just like, why? You know, like why was it changing all the time? And was it like intentionally so that you get confused? So you're like, I don't even know which house they're in.
Either that or a multi-dimension thing, or the house doesn't exist, or the thing where like pieces of their life would keep changing out. Like all of a sudden it's a stained glass window instead of the original window. And so it's kind of like that element.
I know that is so creepy. I guess I was wondering too, if you believe that like Thomas is like an entity or some kind of thing that like exists outside of time, then do you think his family members were also like that way, or do you think like because like I was talking about this with my friend Jan last week, and he was saying that he thought that each one of the family members is like another life that he like manipulated and like has control over or something like that. Do you have any theories about like the family and like if they're like Thomas, or like what do you think about that?
I think that Thomas has brought them in. I think it's just the family gets recycled over and over, and I actually think Jenny is kind of the one who gives it away
Mm-hmm.
of the kids, because they say that like she'll go and play this game of hide and seek, and I think that's her going into different
Oh, like
pockets.
going into different dimensions when she does that?
And she went directly to the basement, like
Oh.
in that first part. Like she knew where she was going. And then it's just like little things. Like she actually calls Eve Emma at one
Mhm.
point.
Yeah, at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think there's something else that she says. And I was like, I don't think Jenny's not related to these people. Like she is not related at all. And at first,
Yeah.
when I first was putting it together, I was like, they've kidnapped these children. Like that was
Yeah.
my first thought.
That's actually true. I didn't even really consider the fact that yeah, these are probably like not his real children. These are probably it's not his real family. Like I think these are all people that he's like yeah, brought in and like brainwashed.
Yeah.
Which I thought that's what he did to Charlie too at the beginning
Mhm.
when Charlie like left the house. I was like, no way. I was like, Charlie would never leave her.
Yeah,
So,
that's I think the other thing that gave it away was Paige has a missing tattoo, and then
yeah.
later on that's what gives Eve the notion that Charlie is not who she is because her
Right.
tattoo is missing.
Yeah, I know. What was up with that? There was like a few moments where there were like missing tattoos or there were like symbols mentioned that were like in the house, right? That later
Mhm.
on like the symbols weren't there or like something like that, which I also think has to do with like the being in multiple dimensions kind of thing.
I got no clue about the symbols.
I don't know. I felt like the whole time we never saw the real Charlie at
Mhm.
all in this book.
Really?
Second that she came back, because she comes back wearing like the locket with a picture of Eve, and she's like, "That's weird." She's not very sentimental, and now she's got this locket with this picture of
Oh,
me.
true.
And when she initially calls her, like it takes so long for her to get in touch with her. I'm like, okay, Charlie's gone. Like whoever's gonna find her is
Yeah.
not Charlie.
Oh my God, that's so creepy. I also
I
was like, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I didn't realize it till later, but then I was like, I don't think this Charlie has been Charlie because the whole time I was going, she keeps describing Charlie as this way, but that's not the character that I'm seeing. And I was like,
Right.
I'm getting so frustrated because she seems like such a bad partner.
Right.
After Eve has talked about how great she is, and then it was at the end, I was like, I think we've had a whole different one this whole time.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I didn't really think about it, like, because I was, yeah, as soon as Eve got the phone call from the real Charlie at the hotel room, my stomach like dropped. I was like, that is so creepy. Ew, I hate that. Ugh. Like, but I knew that, like, in my gut, I was telling myself, like, oh my gosh, this is just the house's way of like trying to bring her back to the house, or like Thomas's way of trying to bring her back to the house. And she is with the real Charlie at the hotel, I thought. And then the fake Charlie is the one calling her from the house saying, like, oh my God, you need to come back. But that's so interesting to think that maybe Charlie like wasn't actually the real Charlie the whole book.
Some of that too, like when she ends up going back and she finds that like she finds Charlie in the basement looking very unwell, like she's been there for a very long time. And I think that's where the ants were leading to. So then I was like, okay,
Yeah.
are they all dead in this house? And
Yeah.
then this weird entity version of them takes over. Like, is this the limbo stage of hell or something?
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
also when there's like says she sees the man in the basement and Charlie's like, just go to sleep.
Yeah, what the
I
hell?
was like, hell no.
I
Hell
know.
no.
I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, what the heck? And
We are
also, like,
barging down there and taking them down. We are
That
not
was the
sitting
most
here.
unrealistic part of the whole story.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, that
you're
was
not
that.
gonna go
Even
out?
then, I was like, this is not good. This is not a healthy relationship. Like,
I know, so weird. Also, too, like that scene when she's at the neighbor's house when she calls Charlie, and it says that there's like that whoop, whoop, whoop sound on the phone, like almost like the Oh my god, that freaked me out so bad because I was like, what is that? And the way that Charlie was being very weird on the phone, like almost acting like she couldn't hear her and like she was distracted by somebody. I thought for sure, like I had a theory that Charlie was like under the same trance that like Thomas was under, that, you know, it was all connected. I thought Charlie was going to be like involved with like the reveals later on. So I was just, like that freaked me out. I hate that. Yeah, that too. I know. And then what did you think about like the neighbor, you know, because like there's a point where Eve goes to the neighbor's house, Heather, and then Heather like confirms the story that like, yeah, Allison was like not actually related to, you know, Thomas, and that she had came in later on, and like she confirms like everything that Thomas said. So I'm like, is this confirming that like Thomas is in control of like more outside of the house? Like maybe like the whole neighborhood is under his like brainwash or something? Because like I don't know, though. I feel like the Heather thing was never fully explained, and that was one of the loose ends at the end of this book that I really wanted more answers on, is like what the fuck was going on at Heather's house? Like why was there all this creepy things going on? Like who was in the house with her? I don't know. That whole scene freaked me out.
I think I might get this a little confused, but I think at one point Eve says she didn't think they had neighbors, and she stumbles across Heather's house, but I might be wrong. I did read it at the beginning of the month.
Thought she was going to
in a minute.
It was like she thought her house ended in the number 7 and she was going to go to 8, but she ends up at 9. And
it was like there was like a missing house, she says.
Heather's.
Yeah. And then honestly, the Heather portion was probably the one part where I was like, I don't really understand why this is here, because Heather, like there's clearly something going on in the house. So then I was like, is Heather in on this? And she talks about how Allison, you know, appears out of nowhere. And if we're talking about, you know, this area is essentially a doorway to things that would, and there's multiple times where they talk about people, you know, appearing and disappearing in this area, which would make sense. But then later on, we hear that it was Thomas who appeared. And it's, so I feel like the true story is that Thomas did it, but then Heather has been told it's the other way at this point.
So he's like, Heather's just like under Thomas's brainwash for the whole situation.
Or like, is Heather even real, or is she just another demon manifestation of whatever old man / Thomas?
That's so true. I know. I was thinking that too. Like, was he trying to replace Allison with Eve? Because like since he tried to pull the whole like you're my sister and you're going crazy kind of thing, it was almost like the same story as like what happened with Allison. And I feel like Allison's character in general is another loose end for me that like I wanted more closure on like what actually happened to Allison, because like I think as far as I'm remembering, it was the ending of her story was that she had like stabbed Thomas 37 times or something, and then like went to a mental hospital and just was taken away. And I think that was like the end of her story that we had ever heard about her. Like I mean, don't know, like
that is exactly what happens to Eve.
Exactly. Yeah.
Eve
right.
Beats the family to death, basically, and then is put in a mental.
That's what I mean. So was any of it with Allison like real, or was it all just like foreshadowing for like what was supposed to happen to Eve?
I figured when they talked about how it had been with Allison, I knew it was coming because Eve starts experiencing the same things. First it's the changing of things in the house, and then it's, you know, noticing different things, and then it's suspecting Thomas of something. So I was like, oh, this is the setup. I don't know if Eve was supposed to be the original replacement. I think Jenny was, to be honest, because at one point there's even like a comment made about like, we'll do what we did to your aunt to you, or something, as like a threat to Jenny.
Yeah, wasn't it confirmed that the documents Eve found in the attic, it said that Thomas was actually a foster kid? Yeah, that's what I mean. So that's why I was confused why like even Heather was under the impression that like Thomas was the real son and Allison wasn't, because like the documents proved that that wasn't true.
There's also documents though that show Thomas never existed. There's other documents that said Allison was the only child.
Yeah, so was any of it real?
Yeah.
Confusion. There was so many things. I'm trying to remember if there were any other like loose ends at the end. Because there was the whole thing too with like, I think it was also confirmed because we got that like obituary from like Allison's father at the end of the book, and it just says he leaves behind his living daughter Allison or whatever. So it was like Thomas wasn't even fucking mentioned. So I'm like, what? All of it is just very mind-blowing. Oh yeah, and Heather's husband has neck tattoos, and then you find out Thomas and Emma's dad also had neck tattoos. Are they the same person? Is Heather really their mom? Whoa. What? I didn't remember anything about Heather's husband, to be honest. Okay,
No, other than the fact that he was even mentioned, and I was like, why was he mentioned?
Yeah. Exactly.
Like nothing comes of it, I feel like.
Yeah. I know one of my theories that I did have was that I thought at one point when, Eve is like in the attic and she's like looking for the tire chains or whatever for their car, and she sees the like woman in the hospital gown, the flashlight shuts off, whatever, and it says she falls out of the attic and then she like smacks her head on the banister and then she wakes up and she was like unconscious for a while. I thought in that scene, one of my theories was that she died in that scene and then she like went to like an afterlife alternate reality or something, like the real Eve died in that moment and then she woke up as like Emma or something. But when I was looking back at the timeline of things, that wouldn't perfectly make sense because then like she still has an interaction with like Charlie after that and like things still seem kind of normal, but I don't know, that was one of my theories. Did you guys have any like crazy theories that ended up like not being true, or like anything that you were theorizing throughout reading? I know actually you talked about like the skinwalkers thing, which is so interesting.
Again, I read it at mostly face value.
Yeah.
I did not know we were doing all these theories. I was just like, oh, this is this. This is this. Oh, here, this is this. Okay.
Yeah.
There's some weird things that happen I don't know about, but at the end of the day, the only thing was at the beginning, because I didn't read the synopsis at all, other than I was like a family cop.
Yeah.
Most of the time, I thought it was going to be like a stranger situation where they like took the family hostage essentially. And then I was like, oh no, this is a kidnapping situation, which I mean, in a way, I guess. Then I was just like all kinds of confused. I was like, we're getting these documents and it's not a kidnapping, but I was like, but I did think paranoia was also playing into it, and then the paranormal would be appearing, but I don't think I was gonna guess alternate realities.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like this book is like a choose your own adventure, in that you can interpret it really however you want by the end.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I really do like that about this, because I always do talk about how like I love books where the ending doesn't like spoon feed you every little thing. Like, yeah, I guess it does maybe confirm that Eve at the end of this book is put into an alternate reality, and that, that little thing at the very end kind of shows that like Charlie is still looking for Eve, right? Like, it's almost like she like vanished from their universe and like nobody else knows that she exists or remembers her. So like I think it does confirm that at the end of this book, Eve is living in some kind of alternate reality where like she still exists, but her life isn't there anymore, and like nobody knows who she is, which is so scary, honestly, to think about. Like that is so like that's like unlocked a new fear for me. Like, what do you mean? Like your whole life is just gone and nobody knows who you are. You have a different name. Like that's so scary. And so I guess my question would be, would you be interested in like a sequel or a prequel? Because I see some in the chat say would love an origin story. I've heard rumors that this author could be writing a sequel. How would you feel about that? Like, would you guys read it, or like, do you want that? Do you feel like the story needs that?
I wouldn't read it.
Yeah.
I'm
sure it would be interesting, but the fact that I enjoyed this, I'm like, I just want to let myself enjoy it for what it is, and maybe I'll explore some Reddit threads and some theories, but I don't know. Sometimes with a story like this where you are left with all these questions, it's better to just leave it that way than to try to
well, because like Ali said, like, once something gets kind of like explained, then it's less scary, right? So like I think in a way, the way that some of these things are left open-ended kind of makes it more scary to me. Like thinking, was Heather like brainwashed, or like what the fuck is going on with Heather? Like not knowing is almost more scary than knowing. So I think I agree that like I would read a sequel or a prequel for sure, like 110% I would read it, but I also don't think I need it. I don't know if I want it either. Because like I'm kind of more the person that like I'm good with this as it is. Like I'm good with the story as it is. Yeah,
I'm the person who said I wanted less answers at the end. So yeah, I don't want another one. I don't want anything else explained to me.
Yes. And then I also had the question of like, would you read more from this author in the future, just in general? Because I think I definitely would. I think this is such a strong debut. And I can't wait to see what this author ends up writing in the future.
I would wonder if the rest of their books would be as mindfucky.
I know. Yeah. Was this just one that's been like sitting there for years, like an idea for this, or like what's? Yeah. I'd be curious to see if the next book that he writes, if it's going to be as like mindfuckery kind of thing. But yeah, I have heard that this book is getting an adaptation according to the internet. Apparently Netflix is already in talks to adapt it. So I'll be very curious to see how this one works as a movie, especially because I feel like usually book to movie adaptations, they always end up changing like a few things, you know? So like I am curious to see how this one will get adapted and what they end up changing, if anything at all. But yeah, very cool to know. And then I guess one of my final questions for this live show that I always love to ask is like, do you have any, you know, books, movies, or TV shows that you would compare this to that you think like, oh, if somebody liked reading this, or maybe if they didn't even like reading this, something that's kind of similar that you could recommend instead?
Yeah, well, House of Leaves has been compared. And I do think if you go into House of Leaves, though, you know, you need to be in a good mindset to know that you are going to be hurting for a while. Don't read it in 24 hours. Would not recommend. I think this also gave me Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher vibes a little bit.
Okay.
A little bit of that weird like enter some world that is not quite like your own.
Yeah.
I won't recommend this one lightly, but it does deal with like different timelines. Rant by Chuck Palahniuk. If you're going into Palahniuk, please read the trigger warnings. Know that you are going to go in for also probably a very exhausting brain experience. And then Daphne by Josh Malerman.
Yeah, that's a good
those
one.
would be my book recommendations.
Nice.
I pulled off my Ian Reid books that I have loved. Foe, I feel like, is more similar plot-wise. We Spread is pretty similar in the terms of like what's happening in the story and developing theories about it wise, but loved both of these. And just like reminded me of Ian Reid in general and his weird writing style. And then I've seen a couple people mention it in the chat, but the movie Coherence is so good and such a good comp movie.
That is such a good one to recommend. Yeah, I didn't even think about Coherence, but that is such a good one to compare this to. The ones that I was thinking of, because I know like the original book description of this actually compares it. It says Get Out meets Parasite in the blurb of this, which I don't know if I fully agree. I mean, I can see Get Out a little bit more than Parasite. Like, I don't really see the comparison there. But the movies that I would compare this to would be like Leave the World Behind. You know, like a family like showing up on a doorstep and you're just kind of being like, oh shit. It's definitely the same vibe as that. And then also the ending of this book reminded me a lot of the movie Mother, where like it's just absolute chaos and you're just kind of like, what the fuck is going on? And like nothing's explained and you're just like, what am I doing here? And it's a lot to take in. It kind of reminded me of the movie Mother in that way.
See, I have not watched like a popular movie in 10 years because time. So all of my movie recommendations were like Cabin in the Woods, Faces in the Crowd, Sucker Punch, Sinister. And then the only recent one that I saw was the TV Glow. I recently did a Discord movie watch along for this, and the first half of it we were all like, what is going on? And then by the last half we were like, oh my god, like the brain explosion.
Yeah, any brain explosion movie could be compared to this for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, very cool. I love all the ones comparing it to Black Mirror. That's so true. Like I could so see this being like a very intense episode of Black Mirror. So I can totally see that. 1988 on Netflix. Oh, I don't know that one. Very cool. Well, it seems like there are a lot of good recommendations in the chat, so I'll have to go through all of these just a little bit later. But anyways, very awesome. Thank you all so much for joining us for this book troop discussion. I had such a good time discussing this book, and I feel like after discussing it, it kind of does make me want to like bump this up to 5 stars, just because I do think this book is like one of the most like unique kind of like, you know, I just love books like this where you can kind of like talk about it more and theorize. And, you know, like we talked about, there are so many theories on Reddit. I've like barely even started looking into all of the stuff that's on Reddit about this book, but I kind of love that. Like, I love any kind of story that like encourages you to kind of like do more research and like look into like how other people feel about it. And I think it's kind of fun. So thank you so much for joining us in this live show discussion today. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much to Allie and Ashley. Absolutely. And if you're not unfamiliar with their channels, their links will be down below so you can check them out. Do you have any like upcoming things that you want to promote on your channel that's happening soon? Maybe?
Oh, yeah. Quickly, I did post a link into the chat that someone's been at work making websites based around the websites mentioned in the book.
Oh, very
But
cool.
this one, it's one, and when you click onto it, it's from the Rare Toy website that apparently
Oh,
they talk about them to it. It just says they're watching you over and over again. So people have
oh.
been at work for
Yeah.
that. Yeah. But I'm going to be doing another 24-hour reading sprints October 19th at 10 a.m.
Very exciting.
And I go for the whole 24 hours. I do not rest.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow, you need to teach me your ways, like how you do that. That's amazing.
I have this thing called ADHD that like really helps me sometimes. No.
I see.
So yeah, I'll be doing that and hopefully have some guests on. We'll be doing
very cool.
some fun things in between, and yeah, it's always a good time.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'll be doing my 24-hour horathon thing at the end of October, date TBD. I do rest, so
so you won't be live for 24 hours straight?
Same person, yeah.
What do you mean? Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Well, awesome. Well, thank you all so much for joining me. I hope you have a good rest of your Friday night, and we will see you next time. Bye.